I'm joined in studio today by Dr. Riel Miller, who's the Head of Futures Literacy at UNESCO. Riel, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
You work in this very interesting space, referred to often as foresight or anticipation. Talk us through what that's all about.
I've been working for about 30 years now in a field which is related to how people think about the future. And I first sort of came across this when I went to the OECD in 1982, and I saw the power of forecasting. And I saw the power of forecasting in the hands of heads of state who all came to the OECD in Paris to talk about economic growth, inflation, unemployment. And they had their forecasts in hand. And they knew from us, because we were the technocrats behind the scenes, that all these forecasts were inaccurate. And what was intriguing to me at the time was the power of the illusion that we know the future. And so the last 30 years, I've been trying to figure out the different ways that we think about the future and how those different ways of thinking about the future change what we see and what we do.
Yet you talk about this idea of futures literacy, which sounds quite different to the sort of run-of-the-mill way of looking at the future. Unpack that a little bit for us.
Two important issues that you raise, and these are very important questions. The first is that specific units of a larger organism have their own integrity in the sense that they have a design, they have a set of goals, they have a set of procedures, and they test things. And that can be a species, that can be a business. And they live and they die. And that's good, because evolutionary change and experimentation and failure are all important for learning and for evolutionary adaptation. So if a specific unit, makes a bet, a business, on the basis of a prognostication, one way of using the future. You imagine the future as if it was a race, a horse race, and you want to bet on the winning horse. You look at all the factors, you make your bet, you put the money down, and then the system's closed. Absolutely, but you may lose. From the perspective of the society as a whole, that's good, because it creates evolutionary turnover, and that's the strength of competitive, isolated systems. And the way you use the future is appropriate for that kind of unit. And futures literacy helps us to be more sophisticated in the way we use the future as a lens, as a kind of glasses, to see the present, not just as what we want to bet on, but on things we haven't even named. So if we just stick to the horse race, and that's the only way I'm going to make my gamble, then you won't notice the poker game on the side. But if you open your eyes and you see, well, there's something else that I can gamble with and I can play, it's a way of opening up our perception by understanding the role, which is fundamental to our universe, in fact, of anticipation. Because trees anticipate, protozoa anticipate, and the cat that waits for a mouse anticipates. So anticipation is fundamental to our universe, can be used in many different ways, of which the business approach related to planning and imposing your plan on the world is one way, which fails regularly, which is not a bad thing. But also from a societal point of view, you want to be able to take advantage of the richness because it provides us another way into resilience. And here I'll make a point that I think business community understands well. You can be resilient by taking a low-risk approach, but one which is defensive, and you can buy insurance. So you build a big castle, and you take out some insurance, you put your money in Switzerland, and you think, I'm safe. That's one way. The other way is you make a lot of little bets. You diversify your portfolio, and you can lose some without losing all of it. Now, if the species wants to diversify, being open to not just what we predict, but also what emerges and what we can't name, is a crucial contribution to our ability to take advantage of diversity, creativity, as a way to create resilience.
Another way, perhaps, of getting at the same problem is to say that since the 2008-2009 financial crisis, there's been this global conversation, a rising conversation about the limitations of democracy in its current form, sort of post-capitalist global system, the legacy systems of industry and the negative effects on the planet, and the need for some new approach.
Today, as we move into societies where we're questioning the ability of our current organizational forms to respond to the power of our tools, because we become more powerful with our tools, but also our desire for respect, for cultural distinctiveness, for differentiation, diversity. To be able to be capable of encompassing that, our institutions need to adapt and evolve. And so from that perspective, futures literacy becomes a critical component for developing the capacity to be free in the current context. And in that sense, your question is very precise and important, is that democracy and economic activity can both be changed by an approach which allows people to be much more effective at negotiating shared meaning, respecting specificity, and also escaping the fear of the future, which is related to the idea that we can kill uncertainty. Uncertainty is a tremendous resource. It's in fact the origins of our freedom. And so reconciling human agency with the reality of complexity, which is the way we think about the universe today, becomes essential to advancing both economic value creation and democratic political expression.
My last question to you. You're in South Africa visiting at the moment with some friends from across the continent, I believe on a project exploring the possibilities for a project on anticipatory or futures literacy. What's the project all about and what do you hope to achieve through it?
We're here in South Africa right now meeting with lots of different players and potential partners to see how we could work together to run prototypes with the aim of probably running 3 or 4 towards the latter half of this year, then maybe 15 to 20 in 2019, reporting back on the prototype design principles, which would allow for the general diffusion across Africa of the capacity to do futures literacy, with centers in South, East, West, and North Africa that would support that futures literacy activity. And I'll just end on this, which is that we're also doing it globally, which is that we already have 3 chairs, UNESCO chairs in future studies, anticipatory systems in Italy, Finland, and Malaysia. There are 4 or 5 more in the pipeline from Uruguay and Greece and UK and Netherlands and Tunisia. That's part of a bigger kind of process that's underway to establish, I think, a more mature approach towards using the future, not because it's something very clever, but because it's in the nature of our world today that we need to be able to be more sophisticated. And so popping up all over the place is this desire to understand better how the future enters into our thinking.
So anticipation seems to be in the DNA. We just haven't used it as well as we could. Thank you again for joining us and good luck with your project.